Hello, and welcome to this slightly spooky episode of JakeMakes. My never-ending quest for views has apparently brought me to the low point of bowing to the strange and utterly inexplicable phenomenon of Western culture that takes place every October 31st, in which rational adult humans lose their minds, dress up like demons from the pit of hell, and knock on random strangers' doors, begging for sugar-infused garbage that causes diabetes. Today we're looking at the Grim Reaper in his famous Scythe, also pronounced Scythe, if you're one of those people. We'll be making a full-sized Grim Reaper Scythe, talk about the origins of Mr. Death himself, and test out that Scythe to find out if it actually is a good weapon or if it's just a really stupid idea. This is gonna be fun. Here's the part where you guys are gonna have to pay really close attention because the design for this is so complicated it'll blow your minds. Step 1. Forge big pointy thing. Step 2. Put it on a big stick. Step 3. Actually, no, that's about it. Alright, materials we're going to be using to build the Scythe. First off, for the handle, it's pretty much impossible to get a handle that's 6 feet long from any store or online, so we're going to have to scratch build one. To do that, we're going to need some wood glue. I got us a really big, long, like 8-foot piece of oak hardwood. Then, for the blade attachment, we're going to need 1-inch diameter black steel pipe, 3 bolts, and nuts, and a piece of flat 1/8 of an inch mild steel. And I put those out of frame. There you go. As far as material that we can make the blade out of goes, I've got 2 options. Number 1 is to use this section of a leaf spring. That's 5160 high carbon steel. It's a good steel. However, I want to save this for a actual sword instead. This is gonna be more material than we need. As you can see, it's like 1/2 inch thick. The other thing we can make it out of, which is what we're gonna be doing, is this massively huge lawnmower blade. It's like 1/4 inch thick almost. This will be about perfect as far as the amount of material we need goes. My friend Caleb gave me like 12 of these things that they had laying around. Thank you for that. Obviously, the first step with any lawnmower blade project is flattening out the blade. It's flat, so now we'll just start curving it and working the tip of it, top section of it, down and out, drawing it out into that point we're looking for. I'm probably about halfway done with the profiling now. The size right now is about 19 1/4. My goal would be to get it to at least 24 inches. Scythe blades, they kind of vary. It depends on the use. The shortest one I could find was 24 inches. So I'm gonna try to get it at least 24 inches for this. Go. So who, or what, is the Grim Reaper? The Grim Reaper is the personification of death. Death is the one thing that every person ultimately has to face, but actually has zero control over. It's also the thing we most struggle to understand, obviously, because someone can't die and then come back and tell us what happened. Is this life all there is? Do we simply pass out of existence? Do we get reincarnated as someone else? As a Christian, I believe that death is simply a doorway into the afterlife. This part of our life closes, death opens up the next part of our life. But I'm getting off topic. Humans do not like things that they don't understand, so we try to make them more understandable, to bring those things down to our level. So, going back thousands of years, and in nearly all religions or mythological, cultural things, death became a person. To the ancient Greeks, death was a pleasant-looking young fellow named Thanatos, which, yes, is not quite so coincidentally similar to Thanos, the Mad Titan in Avengers and whatnot. Anyway, in Celtic mythology, it is the specter known as Anku. In India, they believe in the Lord of Death, King Yama. You can even find inspiration for the Grim Reaper in the Bible. The fourth horseman of the apocalypse in the book of Revelation is called Death, and he is given authority to wipe out 1/4 of the earth. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. The current black-robed, scythe-wielding version of Mr. Death that we're all most familiar with originated around the 14th century, during perhaps the biggest tragedy in human history, the Black Death. The Black Death was a plague that claimed the lives of 75 to 200 million people in Eurasia in the course of only like 4 years. That's from 30 to 60% of the population, depending on what areas you look at. It took 200 years for the global population to recover from this plague. Surrounded by so much suffering and seemingly indiscriminate death, it's no wonder that the concept of death became a grim, dark, black-robed figure who swept his scythe over vast swaths of humanity. Since that time, the representation has changed very little. The Grim Reaper is usually pictured with a scythe or an hourglass, or both. The scythe, a harvesting implement, is used to signify the harvesting of souls, and the hourglass signifies that a person's allotted time on Earth has come to an end. Alright, so now, as you can see, we've got these bevels gorgeously roughed in there. So we are ready for heat treat. Only problem is, to heat treat the darn thing, we have to have a quench tank. And we went and bought a bunch of vegetable oil, so we're good as far as oil goes, but we need a tank to hold all the oil. So we're gonna use a piece of PVC and cap the end, because that sounds smart. But we realized if you go ahead and put it in there, since it's curved, it doesn't fit all the way. Ain't that glorious?
Totally.
So now we don't know what to do, so we're gonna go out and go to some stores and see if we can find something that'll work. Just too small. What we're thinking is we can stack these up one on top of each other like this. That gets us enough height. Then we just gotta cut the bottoms out of them, duct tape them together around the middle, and there we go. Alright, it's time we move on to the big staff thing, and this should be pretty simple. First thing I'm gonna do is cut the board, which is like 2.5 inches long, right down the middle. So each side is 1.25 inches wide, and then I'm going to glue those two pieces together. What we're gonna do now is use the table saw to take our squarish block, and we're going to angle the blade so we can chop off the corners. And when we chop off the corners, we will have an octagonal shape. There we go. I need to cut that bit off, but I now got an 8-foot octagonal staff. Bang! Boom! Now before we do heat treat, we need to talk about the way we're going to mount this Scythe blade, or Scythe blade. I'm going to be doing it a little bit more complicated than necessary, and I'll show you why later on when we're testing this thing. Instead of just welding the blade to the pipe, I'm going to weld a flat mild steel plate to the pipe and then bolt the blade onto that plate. So before heat treat, we need to drill 3 bolt holes in the blade, because afterward that blade's obviously going to be much harder and it'll be a lot more difficult. So let's drill them holes. Look at those glorious poop welds. My gosh, aren't they pretty? Man, so pretty, so gorgeous, so perfect. To the people in the comments who are going to tell me that my welds look like garbage, you can't fathom the depths of how much I don't care. I don't care. Now what happens after you burn a stick like this is it gets covered in ash, and it also raises up some of the wood so it's not as smooth anymore. So after you burn it, you have to go ahead and go over it again with some fine grit sandpaper. You need to be careful not to sand too much though, because you will take off the darkness. You will sand out the burn. All you're trying to do is smooth it down again, basically polishing it. You know you did the polishing right when you can see the light reflecting off of it. Oh man, it feels so good. Awesome! Now we'll lay our mounting piece over the top and mark where it comes down. So I've got this thing where it'll slide on about to there, and then the wood widens out, so I'm gonna have to hammer it in. Reckon that's as far as it's gonna go. Well, hopefully this thing will hold the liquid in. Well, reckon that's enough. Tempering done now. You can see that pretty golden brown color. I drew the temper back over by the holes because that's where the most stress is going to be, so it's softer back there. And then I went ahead and torched the spine so that the back of the blade was nice and soft. So hopefully we have an excellent springy temper. Sweet mother. All right, so now we're going to test the sieve to see if the sieve is stupid or not. We've got milk jugs, multicolors. We have soda, blood red color. We have pumpkins that are orange. And we have coconuts, which are like good human skull analogs. And then we have a bag of apples. Oh! It's so bad. Oh, this is so scary. How many do? Haha, look at that. Let's see if we can cut it completely in half.
Oh!
So, however, I'm guessing you'd kind of hit it like a curvy pole.
Slice it along.
You know, it's hard to do, but like instead of just like stabbing it, I think it'd be cool if we could like...
Oh!
Man, how'd you do that? You just took the cap off. Look, the cap is gone. Nothing else has been touched. He decapitated it.
Hey, that's my joke.
Oh!
What the heck? Clean cut.
He just hooked it and cut half of it. It's terrifying.
This thing is so peculiar to aim.
Oh my goodness, brutal.
Oh! Those are basically your only moves. The problem with a sieve is it's a really, really stupid, inefficient weapon. And here's what I mean. You see this curved blade? Curved blades are the most efficient blades pretty much ever, whether it's curved in or curved out. Curving in is especially effective because it's a hook. It hooks, and then with the rest of that draw, you pull it along the blade, and that creates a very vicious cut. It's the same thing, the opposite, when you have a curved blade going up. For instance, if the top was sharpened, except you don't have that pulling advantage. Instead, you're dependent on the momentum of the swipe. Now, those advantages are pretty much negligible by the design of this thing because it's mounted at a right angle. Because of
the angle of the edge.
Right, because it's mounted at a right angle. Basically, the only way to cut anyone with it is purely stabbing them. I'm not gonna hit you, it's okay. The main problem with this is in combat, you can butt someone with the front of it, but if I'm going to try to cut someone, I have to get it on the opposite side of them. Which means if they have a sword, I'm already dead. It's a really, really terrible weapon. Basically, the only thing you can use this weapon for is hooking someone's legs, arms, or head, but at that point, you still have to be so close that you're probably already dead. It's terrible. It's really terrible. What you want is this blade mounted up at an angle like this would actually be effective because you can take advantage of the curved edge and be able to actually swipe and catch someone with it, or just straight up would be even better because
and use
then
it somewhat like a spear.
Yeah, because then you got the sharp point and you basically got a sword on a pole.
Yeah.
Which is actually what war sieves were. They would take the regular sieves and modify them and flip the blade straight up.
Scythe.
Sieve.
Scythe.
Sieve. It's a
Scythe.
sieve. Pronounced sieve.
Scythe. No one says sieve.
Yes, they do. I do. You might have guessed it, but that's why I attached it with these bolts. I designed it so that I can take the bolts off, flip it up, and then bolt it back on. So that's what we're going to do now, and I'm going to show you how much more effective of a weapon that is.
That's why I want to
All
watch
right.
it. I would love.
There we go.
Oh my God.
There we go.
Yay! No!
Bro, I totally felt like I was gonna. Like,
Yes!
I told y'all to move away. You didn't listen. You're soaking wet.
Yeah!
That's awesome.
I noticed.
Oh, obviously just the ability to have that amount of blade that you're actually able to hit someone with every time makes it so much more efficient. So we're gonna try the coconut thing again. Instead of having to somehow exactly get the point on it, now you just have 2 feet of blade to hit it with. I think we've got it pretty well covered that the typical pop culture rendition of the Grim Reaper Scythe is a pretty stupid weapon. The War Scythe, however, was pretty stinking great. Anyway guys, that's about all we got for today's episode. Thanks so much for coming along. I'm like totally afraid I'm just gonna take the top of my head off all the time with this, because like the point is just low enough that I could totally stab myself in the top of the head with it. Terrifying! Such an awkward thing. You guys know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe, ring the bell if you enjoyed this video. I very much would appreciate it. I will see you next time. Jake out.